Hi there, I'm Kelly Perkinson. I will be presenting the clinical case study for Unit 8 concerning Elsie, who is a 32-year-old female. So Elsie is a 32-year-old female. She enjoys rock climbing, and she is a PhD graduate in archaeology and English. She spends time mountain climbing, treasure hunting. She rides motorcycles. She spends a lot of her time in caves, a lot of the time in rural areas, sometimes third world countries. Recently, her most recent excursion was in the Mayan ruins in Mexico off of the Yucatan Peninsula. So her parents were also aristocrats, so she's used to a different way of food preparation. So she has her own personal chef, and she's vegan. So Elsie presented to the hospital with headaches, cough, diarrhea, fever, night sweats, leg rash, and general malaise, which is just fatigue. And so once she arrived, she quickly declined, and she was placed on total parenteral nutrition, and she was also, the reason for that is she was placed on mechanical ventilation as well, because sometimes ascariasis can cause breathing issues, and it's safer to do it that way. Once she was on total parenteral nutrition, they did an X-ray and CT scan, and that revealed that there were tube-like structures that were found throughout the small intestine. A mass was also located that looked to be like a mechanical bowel obstruction, and that was seen in the distal jejunum. So once all of these things were discovered, they decided to do an exploratory laparotomy, and that revealed ascariasis, roundworms in the proximal jejunum. These roundworms varied anywhere from 12 to 38 centimeters in length and 3 to 7 millimeters in diameter. So it was also discovered that the mass in the duodenum was also ascariasis roundworms. And it was also discovered that both parts of the small intestine were necrotic. So with that said, an excision was warranted. So they proceeded with the excision and removed 122 centimeters of small intestine, and an anastomosis was then created, which is an end-to-end connection. So she was previously on total parenteral nutrition, which bypasses the gastric system and comes through in an IV. When she was post-operative day 4 from the excision, she was able to resume enteral nutrition due to her bowels functioning properly at that point. So her anthropometrics, whenever she first entered the hospital, were, she's 5'9". She currently weighs 118.2 pounds. Her body mass index is 17.4, which puts her on the higher end of being underweight. And her unusual body weight is 61 kilograms, which would put her in the lower end of body mass index within normal limits. But her reason for coming to the hospital was she has just had 16 pounds of weight loss recently and was suffering from abdominal distension, headaches, cough, diarrhea, fever, and night sweats. So Elsie has a previous medical history of having hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, valley fever, small bowel obstruction secondary to ascariasis, which she was dealing with upon arrival, and her secondary diagnosis is profound protein-calorie malnutrition, which is mostly because of the ascariasis. Also, her social history is she's single. She has a PhD from Oxford. She does not use alcohol. She does not smoke cigarettes. She typically exercises daily, but she does have some sleeping issues. While she was in the hospital, reference ranges can vary from facility to facility. So while she was in the hospital, she had lab values drawn from a complete blood count and I would assume a renal panel. They seem to reveal much of what's going on with her current condition and her diagnosis. Her lab hemoglobin result was 10.9, and I found via research a reference range of 12 to 15.5. Her albumin was 1.8 with a reference range of 3.5 to 5. Her BUN was 31 with a reference range of 3 to 20 or 11 to 23. And her creatinine was 1.53 with a reference range of 0.7 to 1.5. Her creatinine clearance is 55 with a reference range of 105 to 132. Her red blood cell count was 3.47 with a reference range of anywhere from 4.0 to 5.0. And her vitamin D was 12 with a reference range of 20 to 50. These lab values are important because with a result as low as what she has with albumin, it typically means that somebody is malnourished, which makes sense to her secondary diagnoses. And her creatinine and creatinine clearance and her BUN, her creatinine clearance is relatively low. And her creatinine isn't terribly high. It's actually, I don't think it would be considered high, but her BUN is of concern. So it leads me to believe that there's some protein dumping. She's not processing protein correctly. So there are nutritional implications here that need to be addressed. So as far as Elsie's nutritional state is concerned, a PES statement that would be best for her problem seems to be inadequate protein and energy intake due to her current malnutrition and her stage 3 pressure area. The etiology behind that is she is malnourished. She has a low albumin and roundworms. Based on her previous lab results, it shows that her white blood cell count was also very high, which would explain she's fighting an infection, and the roundworms are viewed as an infection by the body. Her signs and symptoms are the stage 3 pressure ulcer on her coccyx. So it would be inadequate protein and energy intake related to malnutrition, low albumin, and roundworms, as evidenced by stage 3 pressure area on her coccyx. The nutrition recommendations for LC would be to continue her high protein diet, but I think that it's imperative to monitor the protein intake, considering that she is on the cusp of possibly having some kidney issues. So I think it's important to do a complete blood count in the mornings along with a renal panel as well.